Chalmers and his brother Judd, acting on the principle that a man who would endure such treatment at the hands of another must be a cur at heart, started to harry and worry Bobbie through the streets of the town of Daggett. Bobbie gave them the slip and went to the house of the sheriff. "Sheriff Morgan," he said, "the Chalmers boys are bothering me some." The sheriff looked with curious contempt at the huge body and the handsome face of the Negro, marked with great bars and wales by the beating of the day before. "Can't you take care of yourself, Bobbie?" he asked. "Do I gotta put you in a cage, by gum, to keep you from being spoiled?" "Sheriff Morgan," said the big fellow, "I only want your permission to protect myself." "Say, man," said the sheriff, whose heart was as big as his hand and as tough, "do you gotta ask me for that?" "I am a Negro," said Bobbie. At this, the sheriff dismissed Bobbie, but he remained thoughtful after his visitor had departed. Through a window, he beheld Bobbie encounter the Chalmers stalwarts. Both of these men were proven fighters. They went at their quarry with a rush, and the sheriff scratched his chin as he watched them split upon Bobbie like water on a reef. They rushed at him again. Sam drew a gun, and Judd whipped out a knife, and then Bobbie struck once with either hand. That was the end of the battle. Sam was carried to the next house with a broken rib, and Judd was dragged to the same place with a shattered jawbone. "The big fella don't know his strength," said the town of Daggett. But thereafter, it grew more and more curious and more disgusted with Bobbie. If he were truly fearless, as it seemed to be proven, what could have kept him in the service of the Farnsworth family, enduring such insult and brutality as Tom had used toward him? The explanation requires a backward look to a day when Bobbie was only 10 years old. On that occasion, his old grandfather, with black skin growing gray and dusty with age, talked to him while they sat, fishing, under a willow tree. The source of the complaint was that little Bobbie was making serious objections to certain things that were required of him. Why, he had asked, should he have to polish the boots of his master? Why should young Tom be privileged to use him like a dog? Why should he, Bobbie, with more strength and adroitness in a minute than young Master Tom had in a year, be forced to sit back and play second fiddle to the white boy? Other Negroes did not have to. They were free. They claimed a right to life, liberty, and property. They could swagger as boldly as any white. What was the distinction, then, between Bobbie and the rest? These were the thoughts of Bobbie, if not almost his words, and his grandfather responded with much deliberation, but smoothly, as one who speaks of that which he has long pondered. "Bobbie," he said, "the difference between you and them is that they growing up to be fool niggas, and you was growing up to be a wise one. I'll tell you a little story. You sit down and rest your feet and look up at that slap-daddle water dog lying off yonder on that stone." "But, oh, Granddaddy," cried the little black boy, "why should we live like slaves?" "How you go talking, honey?" said the old man, chuckling hoarsely. "I sit here fishing and squinting at the sky through the trees and watching the ripples that come wiggling on the bank. Is that being a poor slave?" He shook his old gray head. Here, he launched into the body of his story that related how, in the old days when the Civil War passed across the land, he had remained with his master as a servant through the midst of the battling, and how he had fought at the side of the colonel when it might be said that he was helping to tighten the rivets of the shackles that bound his own people. Afterward, when the war ended and he and the colonel went back to the old place in Texas with their scars and their honors, he had served the bankrupt family for years after, years without a cent of pay, laboring and struggling night and day until at the last fortune changed. They moved into the western part of the state, and luck favored the colonel in the cow industry. He became wealthy. But he never could have crossed the dark hour of his life after the war had it not been for the devotion of the old Negro. "Hisself was what said it," crooned that old toothless black man. "He said that I done helped and saved him." He continued his narrative with the growth to manhood of his only surviving child, Charlie.